What's up, everyone? This is Mexican Uppercuts, back at it again with another guide for you. This time, we're not going to talk about matchups. Instead, I'm going to show you how to pilot this glorious, muscular demigod, Zangief. Zangief falls under the grappler archetype, so he's all about getting up close and personal and lovingly embracing his opponents. Obviously, implementing this game plan isn't easy, especially in Street Fighter 6. So I'm going to go over all the tools and strategies you're going to need in order to use Zangief and hopefully climb all the way up to Master. So anyway, let's start with the neutral game. Since you put the fear of God into your opponents by simply existing within their general area, a lot of people are going to play lame as hell just to try to frustrate you. They'll zone you out with their long-range normals and they just won't let you get close. They don't want to be lovingly embraced. So, you need to learn to be comfortable just walking forward, not necessarily doing damage all the time. Sometimes just taking space can be a win in and of itself. Rushdown characters like Juri or Ken are going to try to drive rush at you once you walk them down enough, so just be ready to check them with something like a crouching medium punch. Yeah. Beyond that, the neutral game is pretty specific to each character. So, check out the links in the description to my other videos, and hopefully they'll help you out. But anyway, let's get on to Zangief's buttons. Let's start with Zangief's fastest button, his crouching light kick. It's 4 frames of startup, and it recovers pretty quick. And it actually reaches really far for a low light button. This is the button you want to use if you're ever panicking and you're just like, I need to mash out of this situation. This is what you want to use to get out. But it does have one weakness. It's not special cancelable. So you typically don't want to just mash crouching light kick over and over again. You want to do crouching light kick followed up by a crouching light punch, because crouching light punch is special cancelable. So this will be a good way to keep yourself safe if your opponent ever tries to use drive impact on you or something. His other light buttons are also extremely good. They're a little slow compared to other characters in the cast, but they have great range, and they're all special cancelable to compensate for their low speed. Standing light punch is 7 frames, but it reaches really far. It actually has the same range as your light SPD. This is a really good low commitment button just to kind of maintain space in front of you. Standing light kick is your farthest reaching light normal, and it's, again, 7 frames of startup just like your light punch. This is a really good poke to kind of throw out in neutral. With the new drive rush changes, you don't want to just buffer all the time, but if you're sitting at around this range, you can toss it out and maybe catch something. It reaches really far, and it's a solid little quick whiff punish for you to get a little bit of damage off for relatively low commitment. Crouching light punch is 6 frames. This is one of your faster light punch buttons, and again, it reaches really far. This is a great button in some matchups. It reaches a little bit farther than your crouching light kick. So if you're ever in a situation where you're just like, man, I know I can mash out here, but they're a little far away, crouching light punch is a great check just to kind of keep them honest. Alright, now we're going to talk about the medium buttons. Zangief's best medium... Shut up, Rashid. Zangief's best medium button is definitely his crouching medium punch. It's 8 frames speed, and it's the only medium button that he has that is special cancelable. It's a really solid option to use whenever you want to check your opponent's drive rush, something like this. Yeah, a little something like that. Just, a really solid button. You can, again, and if you're scared that your opponent's going to do a drive impact, this is another good button to throw out. His standing medium kick and his crouching medium kick are both pretty solid. They're long range pokes. They're a little slow. Like the standing is 10, crouching is 9. But they both give you both give you advantage on hit, and they're just good to throw out in the neutral game sometimes. But I would be careful with these because you cannot special cancel them. So if your opponent tries to use a drive impact, you're not gonna recover in time and you're gonna eat it. And also make sure that they make contact, because they stay out there for a little while, like 32 frames for the standing and 29 frames for the crouching. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's long enough for someone like a Ken to just use standing heavy punch and whiff punish you. So yeah, your standing medium punch is kind of a weird button because it's actually the start of your target combo. It's pretty decent to use, like say you block an uppercut or something, because it doesn't combo on normal hit, but it does combo on counter hit. You cannot special cancel this button though, again, because it's the start of a target combo. It's pretty decent to use after you drive rush in, because it gives you just enough plus frames to, and you're at a close enough distance to put them in a little mix up there. They'll be scared of the light SPD. But again, you can't special cancel it, so be careful if your opponent is using drive impact a lot. He also has this forward medium kick. It's a little command normal, this little knee hop. It does go over lows, so if your opponent's throwing out a lot of lows and you want to just hop over it, this is a good option. Another nice thing about this little knee hop is if you space it just right, you can actually be plus on block. You can see I'm +2 here. Be careful throwing it out at close range though, because it is -4. You can get jab punished for this. Another thing that you've probably seen other Zangiefs do, they'll use this little knee and immediately go into an SPD. It recovers a little slow, 34 frames, but it recovers just fast enough to where some opponents might just get caught looking. They'll think it's going to hit them, and you can just catch them staring and grab them with an SPD. So Zangief's medium buttons, they have their uses. Again, mostly long range stuff. Just solid neutral pokes. Just be careful. Your crouching medium punch is the only one that is special cancelable. All right, now we're getting to the big boys, the heavy buttons. These are kind of the bread and butter of his toolkit because Zangief's heavy buttons are extremely versatile and useful for his pressure game. So standing heavy punch is great. It's got a hit of armor and it reaches really far and you can charge it. This is a really good button to use to challenge fireballs, or just if you think your opponent's going to press a button, it's a way to kind of stuff it. Let's see here. As soon as I can get this going. The one hit of armor really comes in clutch. And it's even a great option while you're in burnout, because, obviously if you're in burnout, you can't use drive impact, but you still have this as an armor option. It will even beat drive impact. So make sure you utilize this standing heavy punch to the best of your ability. I would recommend don't charge it up all the way every time though, because then you'll get predictable with it. And also, if your opponent sees you charging this up from mid-screen, they'll just use drive impact and they'll counter it. So mix up your timing. Try not to be predictable with it. Try not to do it from full screen. Sometimes just let it go quickly. Sometimes let it charge up all the way. Just vary your timing as much as you can. Another great thing about it is that it is... I need to get him to not recover with that. It is plus on block if you fully charge it. If you don't, it's minus. Even if you do a mid charge, it's always it's either going to be -3 or it's going to be +3. There's no in between. I would recommend actually using drive rush, because now you see I drive rushed in, didn't even fully charge it, and I'm +1. And if you catch them staring and they let you fully charge it, you're +7. So just vary your timing and use the armor on this button to the best of your abilities. It does lose to lows though, so if they're using a lot of lows, be careful with this. Maybe let it rip a little sooner. So next button is your forward heavy punch, your headbutt. This button is kind of the linchpin of your pressure. It's +4 on block, and you use it in your combos and everything. If you're able to time it right, you can even get a meaty setup on a knockdown. So let me just set him to stop blocking, and let me set him to counter hit. Assuming I'm not bad. Yeah, you see, I hit him with the very last active frames there, so you're able to get even more advantage when it hits them on their wake up. You can even use it for some nice little fake pressure here, because since it's +4 on block, you'll catch a lot of people will just sit there. You can do little light kicks into tick throws. You can just do a headbutt into another headbutt if you just catch them looking. You can do a headbutt into SPD. Like, this is what you're going to use to establish your dominance in the matchup. Very few characters can challenge this, or they'll have to use an invincible reversal to get out. So make sure you use this to kind of keep them on their toes and just establish your presence. Especially because once you get in here, you need to make sure that you don't let them out. It's a little bit slow. It's 14 frames of startup, but it more than makes up for it with its sheer versatility. Next up, we've got your standing heavy kick. This button here, it's really only useful as a whiff punisher. I wouldn't recommend using it up close though, because you see you're like, oh man, I'm +1 on block, awesome. But it whiffs on crouchers, so it's not really all that great to use for pressure. What I would recommend is just, like I said, use it as a whiff punisher here. Let's see. I think it's this one. Yeah, it is. If they let a big button rip from like mid-screen trying to whiff punish you or something, this is a great option to catch them lacking. And Rashid goes a little far sometimes because his heavy kick swings him back a lot. But it's great against someone like Ken, who likes to throw out their standing heavy kick, or Manon, who also likes to throw out their standing heavy kick. So it's got its purposes. But again, I would recommend only using this as a whiff punisher. Again, because even though it is plus on block, it does whiff on crouchers. Next up, we've got your crouching heavy punch. Unfortunately, this button is not great. It's you can't cancel it. It doesn't lead to anything on hit. I mean, yeah, you get some plus frames on the knockdown, but if they block it, you're -19. So, yeah, I wouldn't recommend using this button. And not even as an anti-air, because you might think, oh, it hits up, it's an anti-air. Just use Lariat. Lariat's better. So yeah, just until I haven't found a use for crouching heavy punch. So, you know, if you found a use for it, awesome. But I would recommend avoiding it. And last but certainly not least, we've got your forward heavy kick, your big wheel kick here. It is an overhead, so it will hit crouching opponents. It is minus a lot on block. It's -12. You know, sometimes the advantage changes depending on distance, but it's usually -12. So I wouldn't recommend using it as a way to open up your opponent, because if they block it, you're going to get you a fat punish. But if you manage to space it out, it's one, it's not as minus. If you saw there was only -10. But also, it's a nice little spacing trap. Some people might try to challenge, and they'll whiff, and you can get a nice little whiff punish there of your own. You can either drive rush in and get an SPD, or you can just get a sweep and go for some knockdown pressure. So yeah, if I would recommend trying to practice using this button to get the spacing, even without having to do a setup. A nice little setup is if you land an SPD, get a little micro walk forward, and it'll space it out perfectly. So try to use this move in your toolkit a little, in your game plan a little bit. But again, be careful with the spacing because it is quite punishable. So anyway, now on to the next. All right, so this is future me subbing in because I forgot about one of his heavy normals. He also has a down forward heavy kick, the big drop kick. This move is pretty. This move has its uses. It's really punishable on blocks, so you don't want to use it too often. But it does have a nice little property of it. It goes over lows. Ugh. And you know, freaking drop kick him into oblivion. And if you do it in the corner, you get a nice little wall splat and a little confirm. You can actually get a super off of this as well. Again, pretty high commitment move. It's 16 frames of startup, and it recovers really slow. And if they block it, let me turn this off. You're -18. You're pretty punishable. Even if you're kind of far away, some characters like a Ken or a Jury or something, they could probably drive rush up and get you. But, you know, if your opponent's really, you know, they use a lot of lows, it's good to call them out with this every now and then. So use it every now and then, but again, just be careful with it because it's pretty punishable. Normal throws might not seem all that important for Zangief, but they do have their uses. And Gief actually has more normal throws than the rest of the cast. If you push a specific direction with the throw command, you'll get a different throw animation every time, and they all have different frame data as well. He has a forward throw. He has a down forward throw. He has just a down throw, which will switch sides. He has a down back throw, Stone Cold Stunner, and he has a back throw. To be honest, most of these don't have amazing Oki. The back throw is okay. because you're +8. And if they roll backwards, you're plus a little bit more. But I would say the best out of these is definitely your down forward throw, because if you look, you're +33 right in their face, and even if they decide to get up backwards, you can dash up and you're still +11 right here in perfect SPD range. And if they don't recover, if they recover in place and you dash up, you're +10 in their face. So your down forward regular throw is a great option to incorporate into your game plan. Most people think like, oh, I'll just land SPD, but your regular grabs are a much safer option, and this can lead into good Oki. A nice little thing here, you can do down forward throw, stomp, and that SPD I did was perfectly meaty. If they pushed a button, it would have caught them. So it's kind of like Zangief's interpretation of a throw loop. Yeah, so just use your normal grabs in your game plan. I would recommend try to not do the down back throw to switch sides. Use the regular back throw because it leaves them a little bit closer on block. And also, just one more, you do have a neutral grab. You just neutral grab. If you hold the button down, you give them the people's elbow here, but you are frame neutral, so you can both act at the same time. If you don't do the elbow, you're +22. Again, in their face, similar to the down forward throw. You sacrifice a lot of damage for it, but again, I would recommend like you sometimes don't finish it. Oh man, I got forward like an idiot. Yeah, you can just walk right at them, and there you go. Even if they back roll there, you've got some pretty good advantage. So sometimes finish it, sometimes don't. If you need the damage, use the elbow. You just hold down the buttons, and if you just want the Oki, then don't do the elbow. But yeah, that's his normal throws. Now we're going to move on to his other grabs. All right, now we're going to talk about your running bear grab. This is your half circle back and kick throw. This grab is kind of finicky because it's not based on what button you press. Like light, medium, heavy all do the same damage and all have the same frame data, but it's actually based on your distance to the opponent. So you've got 3 versions. You've got your up close version. This is great to get you out of the corner because it actually side switches. And it also gives you decent Oki. You can drive rush up, and you're in perfect range for a medium SPD. So yeah, if you're ever trapped in the corner like this, and maybe you get a perfect parry, or maybe you get a drive, maybe you counter drive impact or something, I would recommend using this grab to get you out of the corner and get yourself in a more advantageous position. The EX version just gives you a little bit more damage. So like it again, the extra meter doesn't really give you much. Next, you have your mid-range version. You run forward and grab them. This one does have its uses. You can actually cancel into it from something like a standing light kick. So you can catch them lacking, or maybe they think like, oh, I got hit by a button. I need to just sit here and block. So it's a great way to catch them off guard. And also, whenever you're not in range for something like an SPD, you can whip this out. It doesn't reach as far as you'd like though. So if they walk backwards a lot, it will probably whiff. I would recommend using it like you can do something like that. But it is good to just kind of throw it out raw sometimes to just catch them looking. But don't abuse it because once they see it a couple times, they will start to catch on. You can get hit out of it. It doesn't have any armor. And again, the EX version actually is pretty good because if you use EX, it's really, really fast. So if you want to catch them looking, you're like, man, I need something a little bit faster. Spend the bar, and just start and close that distance. It also does have a little bit of Oki. You can drive rush up, and you're just at the very tip range of a light SPD. Be careful doing that though, because if it's a character with fast walk speed like Juri, Chun-Li, or Rashid, they can walk backwards and possibly cause your light SPD to whiff. So use it every now and then, but be careful against those characters with some fast walk speeds. Last but not least, we do have the FAR version. It's a little bit of a meme because it takes so long to start up, but it does have 1 hit of armor. It will still lose to lows, unfortunately. And the EX version actually has 2 hits of armor. So It's not. It has its uses. I wouldn't recommend using it all the time because if your opponent's sitting back there waiting for you, they'll see this coming and they'll just jump and they'll punish you. It's really hilarious to use it against Dalsim though, because if you use the EX version and he hits you with a limb, you'll automatically close the distance and you'll grab his stretchy ass instantly, and it just puts the fear of God into them. It's hilarious. So yeah, in certain matchups this does have its uses, but again, I would be careful using the long range version. The medium version is probably the one you want to use more often, but even then, be careful with it because it does not have armor like the far range version does. And now we're finally here, the piece de resistance of Zangief. Spinning pile driver. This is your win condition, and it's the most important tool in your kit. This is the reason we play Zangief. Oh, yes. So let's start by talking about the different ranges, or the different versions, because they all have different ranges, but they all have the same startup. Zangief does not have a 5-frame poke. This is your 5-frame poke. The light version has the farthest range, and this will probably be the one that you use the most. I mean, look, I grabbed it from another continent over there. The medium version does a little bit more damage, but it does sacrifice a little bit of range. It's useful in certain wake-up situations, like the one we talked about earlier, where like after you land the side switch, you can dash up and get a medium SPD. The heavy version does the most damage out of these, but the range is pretty non-existent. So I would only really recommend using this for a like if you block a DP, or maybe you land a drive impact or something. Here, let me let me set him to punish counter. Like maybe you land a drive and now he's blocking. You want to just cash out the damage. Heavy SPD is, because of its short range, it's a little inconsistent sometimes, so I would recommend sticking with the light and the medium. But the EX version, or the overdrive version, does the most damage out of all of them. And it actually has the same range as your medium version. So if you want to maximize your damage after a perfect parry, or you land one of these and you want to cash it out as much as possible, EX SPD. Like I said, it has the exact same range as your medium, so any Oki situations where you would use your medium SPD, you can use the EX version. Your level 3 super actually has similar range to your light SPD, so like if you're in range for your light SPD, you're in range for your super. And a little thing that most people don't know, I didn't figure this out until a couple of days ago, actually, as soon as I set this. Your critical art reaches a little bit further. Maybe not that far. Your critical art reaches just a tad farther than your light SPD, just barely. So if you're in low hell, they might think they're safe, but that tiny couple of pixels of extra range can make a big difference. And also, it's just great to it's great to use whenever your opponent is maybe drive rushing you down or something. So if you're like, oh no, they've got plus frames, don't be afraid to just churn the hell out of that butter and let it rip. Because they'll think that they can continue their pressure, but you can really keep them honest if you just churn that stuff on block and let it rip. So don't be afraid to just kind of let your level 3 go whenever you're, it's a great panic move. It's your only true reversal. People will be looking for it as soon as you have 3 bars though, so be crafty with where you use it. All right, now we're going to talk about how to play defense with Zangief. His only true reversal is his level 3 super. Level 2 is invincible on startup, but the startup is so slow. It's great. I love that move. But yeah, the startup is really slow. It's 18 frames of startup. So even though it is invincible, it's not all that reliable to use as a reversal option. Because most characters, if they do like a light punch or something, they'll actually recover in time to block. So because of this, rushdown against Zangief can be extremely oppressive. in order to deal with this, you have to utilize the drive system to its fullest. Drive parry and drive reversal are your best friends. Like, don't be afraid to use your drive reversal to get people off of you. I know it costs 2 bars. Well, it'll end up being 2.5 because of the loss when you block it. But utilizing your parry, utilizing your drive reversal, these are your only real defensive options as Zangief. You have to utilize this system to its fullest. And Zangief is at his weakest when he's backed into the corner. Again, because he doesn't really have a reversal, and with his giant hurt box, he's very vulnerable to throw loops. You can see that in the Ken guide that I made. Ken doesn't even have to move forward. You're just like, it's a true 50-50 anytime he lands a throw on you in the corner. So, to be honest, your best bet is to just, since that situation is so scary, you don't want to be there in the first place. That's your best way to deal with it. Like, you're like, oh, well, I mean, obviously it's going to happen sometimes, but if Zangief in the corner is such a disadvantageous situation, you need to utilize the system mechanics to avoid that situation in the first place. Because if you're never in the corner, then you never have to worry about those throw loops, at least not, you don't have to worry about that corner pressure as much. So make sure you parry whenever, if they're ever doing strings that you can parry, try to use parry to save your drive gauge, that way you don't lose it on block. Zangief relies on his drive gauge more than most characters because his walk speed is so slow, and he needs to drive rush in to get Oki. And he needs to use drive reversal often. So using your parry to save as much drive gauge as you can, especially against a character like Guile or someone like Ken or someone like JP, like that's what's going to make the difference between a consistent Zangief and just a lucky Zangief who steals games by just rushing down and praying that your opponent doesn't know the matchup. So yeah, save your drive gauge as much as you can and use it intelligently. Try not to go into burnout if you can help it. Luckily, Capcom patched the drive rush bug or whatever it was. So now we recover from burnout at the same speed as everyone else. But you still got to be really smart with your drive gauge usage. All right, since we're on the topic of defense, now we're going to talk about anti-airs and air-to-airs. Luckily, we have one of the more consistent anti-air attacks in the entire game, the Lariat. Just press 2 buttons, or 2 punch buttons, and anything airborne in the general area will be removed with extreme prejudice. The EX Lariat is a little bit faster, so if you're scared that you maybe were a little bit late and you want a more consistent anti-air, using EX Lariat is a good option. This will catch anything that's in front of you. It's got a pretty big hitbox. It reaches pretty far forward. Unfortunately, though, it does have one glaring weakness. Assuming I can land it. It doesn't hit cross-ups. It loses pretty hard to cross-ups. So that's kind of the one thing about Lariat that isn't great. That's a change that they made in this game, because Lariat used to hit on both sides, but it doesn't anymore. So if you think your opponent's going to cross you up, a good option would be something like jump back light kick or jump back medium punch. So something like this. Since Lariat isn't going to protect you, you're just going to have to jump back and hit them out of the air. So, yeah, because cross-ups are just kind of nasty to deal with, especially when they're right up close. But don't be afraid to just jump back and smack them out of the air with a medium punch or a little light kick here. Another option, if you know your opponent is going to try to cross you up, you can actually use your air SPD. It's you have to jump and do a 360 motion with kick. Yeah, something like this. The light, medium, and heavy versions don't really have much of they don't have any differences. Like, they have the same range and they do the same damage. And that does 2,900. Oh, that did extra because I got a punish counter, but they all do the same damage. The unfortunate thing about these non-metered versions is that they don't reach all that far. The EX version is faster, does more damage, and it also, you know, it reaches a lot farther. So you can actually catch them jumping back as well. It's a little bit of a hard call out though, because you are minus a lot. Like you're in punish counter frames all the way until you hit the ground. Yeah, that's and even after you hit the ground, it's a long time before you can act. So this is a hard call out, but when it lands, it feels so good. But be careful with it. The EX version is also a great thing to use whenever you're trying to keep your opponent in the corner, because if you're keeping them here and you're just like, oh, I don't know what they're gonna do, you can use, because of its speed and its big hitbox, you can actually use it on reaction if you catch them jumping. It does lose to some buttons every now and then, but it's generally pretty consistent at keeping them in the corner. Yeah, but again, it loses to some buttons a lot. Sometimes we're on the struggle bus with Zangief. You can also use it. This move doesn't come up very often, but if you have them in the corner, Zangief does have a, like, if you're in the air, you can push up and heavy punch to get this headbutt. You can only do this when neutral jumping though, and it combos into your EX air grab, so you can do something like this. It's a really hard call out because, again, you can only do this when you're neutral jumping, so you have to really think about when you're going to use it. It's also not bad just, you know, just doing it naturally. The reason this button is so good is because it's fast. If you notice, it's 8 frames of startup. It's really, really quick as an air-to-air option. So, yeah, just, you know, if your opponent's jumping a lot, sometimes, like, Lariat is your go-to anti-air. If you think they're going to cross you up, jump back light kick or jump back medium punch. And if you're feeling really ballsy, you can go for these air grabs. And don't forget to incorporate the neutral jump headbutt into your game plan as well. All right, we're finally at the end. Now we're going to talk about Zangief's combos. I mean, he's not really known for his combos because he's a grappler. Your damage, a lot of your damage is going to come from your SPDs. But the few that he does have are really important to know. Most of them do involve using Drive Rush though, so be careful not to put yourself into burnout. So we're going to start with some little light confirms here. You can confirm off of both your light punch and your light kick in kind of the same way. So here, I'll show you now. Assuming I can actually land the combo. 1880 damage, you know, not much, but it's, you know, a combo's a combo. Sometimes you gotta whiff punish. Now we'll do a crouching medium punch combo. It's pretty similar. Again, assuming that I can actually... It's kind of a tight link there with that down forward medium punch, so make sure you get in the lab and practice it. And then you got your typical jumping combo, your body splash, which is your, like when you're in the air, you push down and heavy punch. This is the main jumping that you're going to want to use. If you want to get a little extra damage, you can cancel the headbutt. You know, a little bit of extra, but sometimes that little bit is all you need. You can also end with EX Lariat to get a little bit of extra damage, and again, sometimes that can make the difference. Again, Zangief doesn't have many combos. That's pretty much it. But we do have some combos that you can use when you want to punish an uppercut or something. So let me just set this here. I'm going to set him to block. If you want to punish, if you block an uppercut, you've got a few options. You can just punish with an SPD, assuming I can get in, not jump, for some nice chunky damage. But if you want to go for an actual combo that'll get you some more damage, you can do something like this. You can use your standing heavy kick starter. You can actually get an instant air SPD. You don't have to jump and then do it in the air, so it actually opens up some combo routes. You can also, if you want to punish something really big, you can use your forward heavy kick. Your forward heavy kick actually has some uses because let's say if they do, like Rashid, when you block his super, he actually goes back pretty far. Don't I have him to block? I do have him to block. You can use your forward heavy kick to catch someone if, you know, you block something and they're really far. You can also drive rush up to get something. But if maybe you aren't ready for it, forward heavy kick is a nice option. Yeah, it's just, if you want some consistency, maybe you just need to close out a round. This is a good option. Now the real great thing is when you block, maybe you block a super or you block an uppercut and they're in the corner. You can get some real nasty stuff like this. Some nice 5,300 damage. If you block something, something big in the corner, you want to make them regret it. They will. If they weren't afraid of you, they will be afraid of you after that. So I mean, that's pretty much it for Zangief's combos. Again, he doesn't have much, but the ones that he does have, you need to make sure to utilize them whenever possible. All right, and that's pretty much everything that I'm going to go over here today. Again, like, how the way that you use these tools will change depending on you as a player, like your own play style. Some of y'all are more aggressive players. You're going to drive rush in and try to keep the pressure up all the time. Some of you might play a little bit more passive and fish more for whiff punishes with things like these. It's all up to how you utilize these tools. I just showed you the way that I personally use them, but feel free to just, experiment and, put your own spin on piloting this character. He's a lot of fun. Zangief is... even though you might hear people say that Zangief is kind of low tier, he's a lot of fun to play. So I hope this helped you out and gave you a little bit of insight as to how to use this character. But anyway, yeah, that'll be it for now. Make sure to like and share the video, subscribe to me here on YouTube and on Twitch, and yeah, that'll do it. So I hope you all have a great day and take care. Thanks for sticking around.